guys, my name is Akshat Goyal and I'm the logical reasoning faculty here at CLATapult. Today we will look at statement and assumption. So this is a particular topic that remains a little elusive for a number of students for the simple reason that this requires a lot of practice and understanding. However, I'm going to share some tips and tricks to help you make this process a lot faster and solve assumption questions in time. So firstly, how exactly are assumptions tested in the CLAT format? So these questions can ask you very directly, which of the following is an valid assumption in the author's argument, or which of the following is an implicit assumption. However, please be careful, do not rely on the word assumption to tell you it's an assumption question. There can be instances where they tell you which of the following strengthen or weaken the assumptions made by the author. So that would be a strengthening and weakening question and not an assumption question. They can entirely omit the word assumption while asking you these questions. They can ask you what is implicit in the author's argument, right? So understand what an assumption is and how it is tested. So I've shared a few questions with you. Let's understand what assumption is to help you see where to use these particular principles. So an assumption is the information that the author feels is so publicly known or is so commonly understood, he, she, or they do not need to repeat it again and again. Simply put, it is the information that is mandatory true for the author's arguments to make sense. Let's take a very basic example. Suppose your friend tells you, I will see you tomorrow. So immediately you're assuming two things. Number one, your friend is available tomorrow, that there's a chance of you guys meeting. And number two, that he does not have any commitments during the time that you're supposed to meet, right? So this too becomes a very implicit assumption, something you take it for granted. So similarly here, it's very important to identify what the assumption is, what is the missing link in the author's argument. So think of assumptions as the missing link between two blocks. It is what ties two sentences together for it to make sense. Let's quickly take a basic example to understand this better. Let's say Shafali is a diligent student. Therefore, Shafali will get good marks in her exam. What is an assumption here? The assumption here is very basic, that diligence is required to get good marks, right? Otherwise, the passage does not make sense. Now here you might be asking, this is something that's so commonly known. Of course, anybody who's hardworking, who's diligent will get good marks, right? However, without this particular information, you cannot really go ahead with it. This is something that you're assuming. Understand that the very first rule we discussed in one of our earlier videos for logical reasoning was think within the box. You cannot use any outside information, right? So how do you know that diligence gets good marks? That is an assumption you make. So please be very careful in identifying this missing link. It could be something very basic, something we take for granted, but extremely useful nonetheless. Secondly, assumptions have to be something that are not mentioned in the passage. Particularly the answer options you choose cannot be a repetition of what the author is saying, because then where is the assumption? So let's say, and this is an example we'll use further to discuss a number of concepts today for assumptions, that Rishi gets 60 marks in his exam. The teacher thinks Rishi is not smart. So what is an assumption here? The assumption here has to be the missing link that showcases to us that there's a relation between 60 marks, between X, Rishi, or any individual getting 60 marks, and between him not being considered smart. So a valid assumption here will be that the teacher thinks whoever scores only 60 or below are not smart students, right? So that is again an implicit assumption that comes into play here. Trick number one to help you understand this better and help you answer assumption questions, just ask the question why, right? So in the previous example, why does the teacher think Rishi is not smart? Right? And the answer will be provided to you itself, because the teacher thinks that anybody scoring 60 or below is not smart. So always challenge or ask the question why in front of the statement. This will help you understand what a correct assumption would be. So in the previous question as well, where we said that Shafali is a diligent student, therefore she will get good marks. Why will Shafali get good marks? Just ask this question and you will find the missing link. That is a correct assumption. Now, this might help you for statements and, statement and finding the assumption to the particular statement. However, in a CR passage, this trick gets a little difficult to use. So that's why I'll introduce trick number 2 for you. It's called the two-step inverse test. So understand that assumptions are unstated, they're not mentioned in the passage, and they provide additional support to the author. Keeping this in mind, the two-step inverse test will help you identify the correct assumption. Let's quickly understand what this test is, and then we'll take the Rishi example to apply this test and learn better. Step number 1, inverse the answer option. So if your question reads, which of the following is a valid assumption, and you have 4 options, you think option 1 might be correct, use the inverse test there. Reverse the option that is provided, and then see what is the effect of assuming the reverse on the statement itself. There can be 2 outcomes. If the statement still makes sense, then that's not the correct assumption. Number 2, if the statement does not make sense anymore, then the original assumption is correct. Let's see how this plays out. The statement being the same, Rishi got 60 marks in an exam. The teacher thinks Rishi is not smart. Let's say option 1 says that teacher thinks Rishi is smart, or teacher thinks Rishi is hardworking, right? This is an answer option. Now, both of us know here clearly that this is contrary to the author. As such, it should be incorrect. But let's apply the inverse test as well and see how it works out. So if you inverse this option, it becomes Rishi is not hardworking, or Rishi is not a smart student. This is exactly what the author is saying. This statement continues to make sense if we assume this, right? As such, this is not the right option. Let's take another option, the option we discussed earlier. The teacher thinks 60 marks means that the student is not smart, right? Let's try and inverse this. If we inverse this answer option, it would become the teacher thinks getting 60 marks makes the student smart, right? However, does this make sense now? If we assume this, is the passage making sense? No, right? If we assume that the teacher thinks anybody getting 60 marks is smart, how is Rishi not smart? He's gotten 60 marks. Right. So here, by inversing the assumption, the statement does not make sense anymore. As such, we know that this is a mandatory assumption we need to make, and it becomes the right answer. Let's quickly take another example to see how this test works. Let's take a statement, my friend should have less sugary drinks in his diet. So say option 1 says, the friend has too many sugary drinks in his diet. Right? It looks like a valid assumption. Let's inverse this. If we inverse this, the option becomes, the friend has very little sugary drinks in his diet. Is the statement still making sense? No, right? If we assume that the friend has too little or very less sugary drinks in his diet, then why are we asking him to reduce it even further? It doesn't make sense, right? As such, by using the inverse test, the statement does not make sense. What does that mean? That this is a valid assumption that must mandatorily be made. Let's take another option. Consuming too much sugar can be bad for your teeth. So the original statement read, my friend should have less sugary drinks in his diet to protect his teeth, right? Let's just assume that. And the option is telling you that consuming too much sugar can be bad for your teeth. Let's quickly inverse this. Then the new option becomes consuming too much sugar is good for your teeth, or it's not bad for your teeth, right? Does the statement still make sense? It does not. The original statement was, my friend should have less sugary drinks in his diet to save his teeth, to protect his teeth. If sugar does not affect your teeth, or it's not bad for your teeth, then how does it matter how many sugary drinks he's having? As such, this becomes an assumption that is very important for the author to make, and this is a valid assumption. I hope these two tricks, asking the question why and the two-step inverse method, was clear for you. I hope this helps you accelerate and ensure you're getting the right answer every time for assumption questions. Thank you so much for joining in. I'll see you next time.